Welcome to My Life in 10 Parts. I am Phil Crofts, aka The Bold Explorer. I'm taking a walk and doing a documentary at the same time with what's happened to me right back to childhood really, and pre-contraception as well. So I've labelled this video The Embryo. Now I'm hoping that some of you guys will be able to resonate quite strongly with certain anxieties. I'm going to be covering my battle with mental health and general anxieties of life really, and what traumas I have been through, and I'm hoping this documentary does help. So this is part 1 of part 10. Now my mum and dad, they met when my mum was 17, and they were both working at a supermarket called Hillard's. Hillard's was finally taken over and ran about 1984 by Tesco. So they got together and they produced me. So they lived in a flat from Peterborough. That's where I'm born and bred, so I'm a Peterborean, and they basically lived in a two bed flat on quite a rough estate, quite a rough council estate, and they had me. I remember being as a baby in the flat with a budgie on the wall. I think it was a blue and white one. And also I remember the hostilities as well. It wasn't a particularly good relationship. I have to add, no fault of my mum's. My mum is one of the nicest people that you could actually meet. Now obviously looking through life as a baby, toddler, going, looking at through my small eyes and my narrative of the beginning of my life really. So we lived in the flat for a while, and I remember one poignant memory was of me. Now this is nothing traumatic whatsoever, this part, but I remember one part where I was outside on the doorstep eating a jam sandwich in my shorts and t-shirt. It was the height of summer and I got stung by a bee, so that was a rude awakening of what was to come during my navigation of life itself. We eventually moved, and we moved within Peterborough to another council estate, which was a 2 up 2 down. For its time it wasn't a bad area, to be fair, but as life went on and I started to get to sort of school age, etc., I used to go with my mates on the bike up and around the green, which was outside the house. And I remember basically things started to turn sour between my parents at such a young age. Now my dad was a very controlling individual. I'd like to, I think, use the proper word, very narcissistic traits, and he wasn't very nice to my mum. He then treated me and my brother very badly. We wouldn't say boo to a goose, and I think that was the start of my journey towards having anxiety attacks, managing mental health, which was a massive factor. Very, at the time, very untold of people's mental health in the 1980s. Now, I remember my mum, bless her, she wasn't allowed to speak to anybody. She wasn't allowed to have any social life whatsoever. And it was really sad, really sad. And when we were in bed, all I could hear was my dad shouting at my mum, and it was just awful. Now, I don't know if some of you have experienced childhood similar to what I'm explaining so far, but I'm giving you the unfiltered truth of it. And I remember particularly when my mum, hadn't seen my mum for about a week. She was in the house, but I hadn't seen her. So she did come downstairs when me and my brother got in from school, and it wasn't great. She had two black eyes. Basically, my dad had concussed her that much that she had to spend a week. That's just a Chinook going over my head there. Yeah, sorry about that. So basically, he had concussed her. He used to, as I say, used to hit her. Domestic violence back in the 80s was untold, and you know, it's not right. It's absolutely disgusting, and it made me doubt and question absolutely everything in my life up to date. That I find it incredibly hard to trust people. Everyone has that light switch moment in them where anybody could change just like that. And I know you're going to say that's just down to life itself, but you know, why should life be like that? Why should people be like that? So the next instance I witnessed was my dad punching a hole what was leading from the stairway to the hallway into the kitchen. It's a wooden panel door, and he was punching his way through it, through the middle section of the door, and he was grabbing her head through the door where he'd smashed the panel through. And I remember so poignantly that me and my brother were just screaming, upset, but also scared to scream. You know, we were very much silenced as children. So yeah, sorry, it's really hard to talk about, but yeah, so we witnessed that. I also remember particularly driving home. My dad had treated us and my mum had treated us to a trip to Alton Towers. Now, I remember my mum telling him to slow down. You know, we were in back in a red Nissan Sunny when they were quite big in the UK, and he was just driving like a lunatic, like what felt to me over 100 miles an hour probably was, but I was too young to really comprehend or get the gravity of the situation at that time, as you can appreciate. I remember being involved in a car accident. Now this wasn't the same day, this was again down to my dad's erratic and abnormal behaviour. He never got on with anybody. He never got on with his neighbours. He was not a pleasant man. And I remember particularly turning out of our house because we had a driveway, and he deliberately, because he didn't like where the neighbours had parked their cars, which was not obstructing our driveway whatsoever. It was close to the curb edge, but nothing to fall out over. Now, he deliberately turned out of the driveway and scraped up all the cars that were there. I mean, it's not normal behaviour, it's just madness. Also, another time was me and my brother misbehaved, as you do as children. We weren't allowed to sit on the sofas. We had to sit on the floor. Our place was on the floor. So in his eyes, we were lower down the pecking order, or the ranks. And we had to call my dad father and my mum mother when we wanted to ask for something. We then got a bit older. We wasn't allowed out. Everything was controlled. It was like being under house arrest. And this really started to play in my mind and question why am I here? If two people, or my dad, behaves in that way, why was I brought into this world? Because I'm now suffering as a direct from what my father was doing to my mum, and living the life of hell. He didn't work for a number of years. Now, he did have epilepsy. I don't believe that can stop you from working, but please correct me if I am wrong. But he didn't do anything around the house. My mum would take us on the school run in the morning, and he would time her coming back, and if she wasn't back in time, he would call her all names under the sun, very derogatory language. Now, due to some hereditary genes, I started losing my hair, and I do believe some of it from a young age was due to stress. Now, the stress and endurance that we went through as children was, if that happened in today's world, I think me and my brother would have been taken into care, because it's not right, it's not right at all. But it was a particularly hard time. Now, my poor mum had lived a life of absolute hell. She was beaten, she was manipulated, she was coerced, she was controlled in every worst possible way, from financially, emotionally. It's just absolutely painstaking to watch and disgusting. So my nan, I was very close to my nan, God rest her soul. She's no longer with us, but she really was such a lovely lady. I will stick her photograph on the top right. But yeah, she was a lovely lady, and she'd been through a lot of traumas in her life. She had lost her son when he was 20 years old in a motorcycle accident. Her husband, so my real granddad, who's no longer with us, was horrible to her, was mistreating her, hitting, and so she had a life of hell too. And yeah, it's just really bizarre. So she used to take me and my brother on holiday to Skegness, which was, back in the time, it was one of the best places on a really low budget you could go. She used to have a caravan down in Heacham, and fond memories. I remember it was just me, my brother, and occasionally my mum would come, but my dad, as I aka call him, the sperm donor, because he's not in my life, he's done nothing good for me whatsoever. I remember playing bingo with in the arcades, and it was the old slot across ones, and it was just, I just loved all the sayings, like I think it was Kelly's Eye #1 and Two Fat Ladies 88. I mean, I don't think you could sort of say that sort of thing now. It's become very PC, maybe for the right reasons, maybe it's over the top, but that's down to every individual. But yeah, she used to get us away from the trauma. She knew full well what was going on. He used to blank his own mum for what felt like years, but when you're a child, it's not like that. It's probably just a few weeks, or at worst a few months. But certainly when you're young, naive, don't have the mental capacity to understand what life is, you're just seeing everything firsthand and thinking that's the correct way, but it really isn't. So also, I had a great uncle, Uncle Teddy. He lived in America, in Boston, Massachusetts, still there to this day, and he was very, very good to us. He paid for me and my brother to go over to America for 3 weeks, because he knew the hurt that we were going through. So I was going to move the way of this cyclist. Hello, mate. Yeah, so I'm currently walking along a towpath of an embankment. It's where I made one of my first videos. It's such a lovely scenic view. I've come a slightly different way this time. But anyway, back to the main story. She knew exactly what we were going through. And he put us up for 3 weeks, just me and my brother, and I tell you what, it was the best break ever away. We actually started to feel more human, well, slightly. But as life sort of went on, I had a lot of self-doubt in my mind. I was incredibly insecure and fearful of a lot of things. Now, a childhood is meant to be happy, love. My mum gave us all that, but as I say, my dad, aka sperm donor, didn't. And I think he's very incapable of love. But it's just bizarre, as he saw his mum treated that way. And maybe the complete blame is not on him. And that takes a lot for me to say that. But he definitely suffered. He was mentally unstable, mentally ill. Now, I don't say that lightly. I've had my own struggles over the years. A lot of it down to childhood trauma. I was a very nervous child because of what had gone on previously, and the way that a father treat his children, his own flesh and blood, is completely beyond me. Now, that caused me a lot of social issues. I was unable to get close to people in fear that I was going to hurt them. I knew that I wouldn't, but it was just that fear every time I get close to somebody, especially later on in life, which I'll cover in the next part 2 of this. But yeah, I was really struggling. My hair was falling out at age 9, you know, and I know a lot of things hereditary, but I'm a firm believer, had I not gone through that trauma at such a young age, maybe it wouldn't have fallen out so quickly. But there's also one other poignant night I remember. Was I was having a dream in bed, and we had Superman curtains and Superman bedding. This is, you know, in the 80s, so this was the original Superman. I think it was Christopher Reeve, and I remember waking up screaming, and we had a dog called Rex. He was just a normal, I think, called mongrel, and he was a lovely dog. And you know, my dad used to beat him. He was just a bully, you know, there's no other words really, a big bully. And getting back to the dream, I remember having this nightmare dream, whatever, and instead of coming up to console me, he would be shouting in the bedroom and then holding the covers over my head in a sense of suffocating me to silence me. And that has made me, even to this point, very claustrophobic of small spaces, or if someone gets too close to me when wanting to talk, you know, it's either fight or flight, isn't it? And I've always been flight. I wouldn't hurt anybody, and I certainly couldn't inflict mental torture on people like me, my brother, and my mum endured, you know. And it's just, yeah, it's just awful. And you know, I remember my mum saying, David, stop, that's enough, you know. And it was it was really hard to forget that, and I never have forgotten it, to be honest with you. But it certainly makes you question humanity, even from a young age. Now, I remember when it was one of my birthdays, and back in the late 80s, up to 1990, you could play out very happily. You know, there wasn't, I suppose there was still nasty people about, but it was less heard of, or people's stories were untold, and that's a shame. That's a real shame. But I remember having a birthday party with a few people from around the green, as we called it. I think I remember Juliet, Stacey, Andrew, I think Stephen Davis, who I went to school with throughout my educational life up until senior school. I'm 99% sure. But anyway, I was having this birthday party and I think it was my 10th birthday. I can't be 100% certain, but I remember every detail of it. I remember what we had. We had jellies out, sandwiches, the usual good mum stuff. You know, mum used to do a lot of home baking. Her speciality, or I think two specialities to be honest with you, was Victoria sponge, butterfly cakes. Actually, it says 3 butterfly cakes, rock cakes, which is basically, I think, just like a scone gone wrong, isn't it? But yeah, so my dad humiliated me in front of all my friends. You know, I got a calculator. I think it was from my parents. I can't be quite certain, but I got this calculator that I could use for school and use for everything. And it always took me a while to grasp things. Again, I think a bit of that was a nervousness, a lot of trauma. And I remember my dad saying, "Oh, it's all right. He don't know how to use this. You know, he's got learning difficulties." I mean, who in their right minds would say that about their children in front of people? You know, you're supposed to love, nurture, so they can be. So you don't want them to be the copy and paste of yourself. You want them to do better. So yeah, and everyone laughed, and I just felt so stupid, so betrayed, so useless, worthless. And I used to doubt myself all the time in every aspect of life. My school life was erratic. Attendance was good. I would have these outbursts at school, and I suppose it was a cry for help, which unfortunately for me, I didn't receive any help from what you would nowadays from like local authorities, etc. But yeah, everything was brushed under the carpet, and you know, my school life was terrible. My GCSEs, everything was terrible. Now, the only thing I did flourish in was amateur dramatics, so that was my best grade. I got a C in that, which, you know, let's face it, I can't really do a lot with that. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a chance to escape reality and to be incarnated as somebody else, to be in a different place, to really shake off all that hurt and anxiousness, and I felt disgusting as a human. So it was a real opportunity to actually play a different character, and hopefully I could morph into that life to be able to forget the one that I was currently living. But even down to my homework, my dad would slam his fist down on the table and basically tell me it's not good enough, and I'd have to sit there sometimes 2 hours or more. You know, bearing in mind I was only in, at this time, primary school, and this was at Dogsthorpe Juniors. I will put a photo up in the top right. Yeah, and it was just completely mad, really, to be honest with you. And certainly it doesn't help. But listen, I'm going to end it here for part one. A lot of bad memories, as you can appreciate. I will be making part two as soon as I can. I hope you've enjoyed this so far, and if you do want to reach out to me, if you're going through similar circumstances or have had similar things happen to you, then please just drop us a line. But see you on the next one, part two.